you know, that's not enough.
Dorsey wasn't that way about his.
Oh no, Tommy was a much more rounded guy. Tommy got killed by life, you know. I spoke at Truman Capote's funeral, and they asked, people will ask what he died of. I said, he died of living. He lived too hard. Tommy lived like that. Tommy died on his own vomit, if you know. And I remember I was in Spain. I was very moved when Tommy died because I really had a lot of liking for that guy. We had never any invidiousness. Tommy respected the hell out of me. I respected the hell out of him. And I've said to people, he's never made a bad record in his life. As opposed to Glenn, as opposed to Benny, as opposed to me. I made some pretty bad records, some I'm embarrassed by. But those were the pressures of the time, you know, song pluggers. People say, what, have you ever regret? I say, yeah, having made Love Me a Little. You know, that's a regret.
When you say you're putting out a record of your choice, what are some of the choice things you've done?
Well,
by
I
your standards?
prefer to get that together and let you hear it when it comes.
I just thinking back of it.
Well, there's a version of Stardust you never heard. I'm going to put out 3 versions of Stardust on that one record. The first one, which is very good of its kind, second one, which is better of its kind, and the last one, which I think is all you can do with the tune. Unless I did it 5 years from now, I'd probably think of some more things. The truth of the matter is, as they say about a work of art, it's never finished, it's abandoned. Somebody takes it away from you. Truthfully, if you're going to write a book, you could be rewriting that forever. A painter has to know when to stop. The hardest thing to know is when to stop. So the problem is that those aesthetic questions never come up when you're dealing in the commerce of the music business. And I am an esthetician. You want to call that snobbish? Okay, what can I do? Those are my sensibilities. I can't change that.
How'd you make records? Who picked the songs?
Mostly I did. When I say I regretted having made some of those song plugger pushed records, I regret them because I look at them and say, they're stupid. And oddly enough, I had to fight an uphill battle every time I made a record of my choice. Begin was an uphill battle. Nobody wanted it.
How did that one come about?
Well, I happened to hear the tune. The show closed Saturday. I heard it Friday. I liked the tune. I said, gee, you could do something with that. When the show closed, I thought that tune is worthy of doing something with. So I sat down with Jerry Gray, and we worked ice to sketch things, and he would write them. And we made a record of it. No one expected that to do it. It didn't matter. I didn't want it. The other side of that, in those days you had 2 sides. The other side was the A side, Indian Love Call. It never did anything. That was the one in ballrooms that would break it up. Begin was a quiet little tune. Pow, through the ceiling. Frenesy was that. The other side was A. This was B.
Did you know you had a hit in front of you?
No, I didn't ever know whether I had a hit or not. I did them all with equal fervor. Even the bad ones. Even the ones that I didn't like very much. You know, you spend all that time making a tune that's going to die in 2 months. You might as well put it in a standard, all that effort. And oddly enough, the records that support me are all the ones that I did against the grain. The recording people, the A&R people, the Eli Oberstein, all those people. What are you doing with this? Why are you playing this? Make Third Man theme. I said, oh, that's a piece of crap. Not even interested.
They fight you on Stardust?
No, Stardust, they didn't fight me. There's a story about that.
What's the story?
Not Eli. This was Harry Meyerson, who was A&R here. He called me one day. I was living in the hills here. And he said, I was living in Summit Ridge Drive, which became a record. Harry said, Artie, we got a stunt. You want to do it? They knew I was very touchy about stunts. I don't like big band bashes. I don't like any of that. I'm a serious musician. As I say, it may be snobbish. I'll use your word over and over. If being a snob means to take what you do seriously, then I'm a snob. No, the one you quoted. I don't mean that you made the word. Anyway, he said, Tommy, we wanted to do a record of Stardust, 2 sides, with our 2 biggest selling records, you and Tommy. You both sell automatic 300,000, sometimes 500,000 to 1 million records. We want to do both sides Stardust. No A, no B. I said, how does it strike you? I said, that's a good idea, fine. So I had this band I put together and I wrote a sketch. I remember sitting in my house at Summit Ridge Drive, writing a 1-line sketch, calling Lenny Hayton in and say, Lenny, let's do this. Use the strings here, use Billy here, use me there, use Jack, Jenny there, an ensemble and out. And Lenny went away and came back with an arrangement on it. Called the band together, went in the studio for 1 tune and made the record of Stardust. In those days, you're supposed to make 4 tunes in 3 hours, union. So we made the 1 tune. I went away, 1 take. It worked. First time we did it, it worked, and that was it. I said, fellas, let's go home. It ain't going to get any better. So we left. About a week later, I called Harry, and I said, what's happened? Tommy was in town. He had come in. I knew he'd come. I hadn't seen him. And he said, oh, Artie, you got to come in and make 3 more sides. We can't release it that way. I said, why not? what? He said, well, Tommy came in. He said, before I make my record, let me hear what Artie did. So the guys are sitting in the studio ready to go and put the record on, and Tommy heard it. He says, I ain't getting on the back of that. That was the end of that. Now, Tommy lost the sale of about 16 million records.
I'll tell you about that record. That record is Stardust.
It's a good record.
We had a program called Stardust.
Well, that's one of the records that I will be issuing. But along with that will be the first one that you never heard. I did one on the radio, I think from the Ritz-Carlton in Boston, a swinging arrangement, beat like this. Much different from the record you know. And I just heard that thing and I couldn't believe it, taken off the air. And then there's a new one with the Book of the Month album.
Artie, what was the Boston connection? Woody Herman told me he laid up in Boston. You stayed up in Boston for a long time. Was it the
Well, Cy Shribman. As a matter of fact, I could have owned a piece of Woody, owned a piece of Hal McIntyre, owned a piece of Miller. Miller was the next one. Cy had a great deal of liking for me. We had a great deal of respect for each other.
He was a booker?
He owned real estate. He had leases on ballrooms and bowling alleys and whatever. He and his brother Charlie ran a lot of New England real estate. So when my band was on its uppers and I could not make a living, it was impossible for me to get booked, a lawyer who was handling my business at that time called Cy Shribman and they offered me a deal. You won't believe this. $1,000 a week, me and the band. He would take care of everything else beyond that. So we got $1,000 a week, out of which we lived, and we played 5 days a week wherever he booked us. But 2, I insisted on having an airline, a radio line, out of a ballroom. He controlled the back bay section of Boston. What was the name of that?
Roseland?
Huh?
Was it Roseland?
Roseland Ballroom, back bay section of Boston. So I had a Tuesday and a Friday or whatever it was, 2 nights a week. We played there. That was my deal. At that time, if your band was right and you were on the air, you got an audience, like today with television. So we did that. At the end of the summer, we survived, and we went out from there, played the first job. We got, I think, $16,000 to $20,000 a week. At that time, a lot of money. And from losing every week on $1,000 a week from 16 to 20. And we went to the Chase and then came into the Lincoln. I chose the Lincoln. We could have opened the Waldorf, but I chose the Lincoln very deliberately. I was very sly. I wasn't stupid. I wasn't naive. And I decided if I went in the Waldorf, no one would know whether it was me or the hotel that was doing the business. But if I went in the Lincoln and we made that into a big, wild thing, they'd know it was the band. So,
where was the Lincoln? Was that in Times Square on Broadway?
8th Avenue.
8th Avenue?
8th Avenue, right in the middle of all that crap. 8th Avenue and 45th, I believe.
And you went in there what year? 39 was it?
38.
38.
Yeah, and we busted it up. Just broke it up.
Was that fun?
Oh, sure. The band was swinging. It was a great band. I was enjoying myself. But that was when that demon success hit me. The bitch goddess that Henry James talks about. Once I got the bitch goddess on my neck, it was no good anymore.
You told me the other day your theory about arrangers is that they...
Pardon me?
About arrangers.
What about?
Talking about Cy Oliver. You said the arrangers didn't make a band.
Well, no, because you see, a band leader at his best is an editor. It's like a newspaper or like a book editor. Scribner's puts out a certain kind of book. They have a certain guy who picks the material. When Max Perkins was there. Or you look at a guy like Ralph Ingersoll when he ran a paper. Or Hearst. The papers read the same wherever you went all over the country. Well, a band leader. Guy Lombardo has had 90 arrangers. Always sounds the same. My band, I went through arranger after arranger, but there was a sensibility at the head of that. And you heard it. Goodman always sounded pretty much the same way, no matter who arranged. I had Cy write for me, and I would edit his arrangements till they suited me. Basie, the same thing. Basie couldn't arrange, but he knew what he wanted. And if he got an arrangement that didn't work for him, he got very impatient. No, but he wouldn't spend much time on one. I, on the other hand, would get very, very patient with a guy like Eddie Sauter, because I trusted Eddie. And I thought, well, he's written something there. He must have heard something. And a couple of his things, like Made with the Flaccid Air.
Yes, that was the last record.
It's a hell of a record. Took a long time to get. My present band, and they're very fine musicians, have trouble with that piece. It's not a matter of the notes. It's, the notes are a way to play music. Again, pass the notes into music. I was very interested in what could be done with this idiom called American music. We called it jazz. Jazz went out of business as a word. When Bessie Smith and those people were doing what they did, Ma Rainey and, what's her name, Victoria Spivey, that was jazz. It was primitive. The early trumpet players, Lou Oliver, Kid Ory on trombone, those were jazz players. Louis went into something else, and now jazz is so sophisticated it's a stupid word. It's a pejorative word. When you say, look at the New Yorker, goings on about town, music. There'll be ballet, there'll be recitals, there'll be quartets, there'll be symphony. Then it says jazz, folk, rock. How can you lump jazz and folk and rock? They're nothing like the same. Folk, by its very definition, is primitive music, untutored, unskilled. And rock, I don't know what that is, it's glitz, most of it. And jazz is a highly sophisticated art form that only America has produced. And now it's beginning to get currency all over the world. But it's so surrounded by semantic confusion and musical confusion that even the players are bedizened by it. They don't know what they're doing. It's part of what I'm writing about.
Have you heard some good jazz musicians in the last few years?
Oh, there are a lot of them around. A tremendous number of them around.
Are they playing good jazz, or are they not?
I don't know what the word jazz means anymore. Freddie Hubbard's a hell of a trumpet player. Dizzy's still playing very interesting things. What's his name? The new guy. Marsalis. Everybody comes to him. Well, he's very, very skilled. He just doesn't tell me stories yet.
Miles Davis.
Miles, interesting guy. Tries different things. You can talk about trying different things. Is he a snob? What is he? No, I stay with that because I hear what people say and I get very concerned.
There's lovely guys for a lot of that.
Well, but let me ask you a question. Don't you agree with the thesis I have, and I do this in my lectures? The more you know about everything, the richer anything you do will be.
Oh, of course.
Well, that's why I do this. I have an insatiable curiosity. I'm a voracious reader. I must read 3 books a week. And some of them very heavy. I say 3 because then when they're very heavy, I slow down a little. And others I'll read in a day and a half. I read all the time. I go to bed reading. I wake up after breakfast. If the phone isn't ringing or I don't have mail, I read. So reading is a very big horizon expander. Well, once you've read a lot of things, your mind is no longer the same as an illiterate guy or an illiterate guy. Want to be picky. Well, all right, so here I am. My mind is filled with all these dead voices telling us things. Though the opposite, if those who don't learn from the past are condemned to relive it, I've learned from the past. I'm not going to relive it. So when my music is going on, I have to think differently about it. I think differently about the means. I think differently about the audience. I think differently about my role in connection with what I do. And the way I'm cast by people. It all is part of it.
Oh, my.
What's going on?
There's a little alarm going off.
An alarm?
It's in my calculator.
Oh, could be.
I heard
Yeah, we're all connected with a giant computer somewhere or another today.
Beep. I couldn't understand what that was.
I carry them around every once in a while. They go. So, to answer your question, yes, I would say that I'm quite different from most of the general run of musicians. But I'm quite different from most of the general run of people. Musicians are people. It's a false syllogism here.
Do you regard it as a very sad thing for you that here you had achieved what you were looking to achieve and it wasn't satisfying?
I didn't achieve what I was looking to achieve.
Well,
I achieved it for a minute and then wanted to go on. I achieved the idea that I could get together a group of men and play the kind of music I thought I should play and get better and better. That was my aim. I got to a place and they said, stop, don't grow anymore. Like telling a pregnant woman, don't get more pregnant. Don't let the baby grow. That's deadly.
That beyond everything else was what soured you on.
That's the burden of my lay, as the minstrel would say. That's the basic burden. You were not allowed to do what you wanted to do by the mass audience you needed to support you in whatever you did.
Did you miss the music when you took those years off?
Of course. It's like asking me if I had a cut off a gangrenous right arm, would I miss the arm? Of course I missed it.
Did you have to stop
I felt crippled.
Altogether? I mean, couldn't you just play something?
No, you can't do that. How can you do that? Your standards get so high, you expect so much of yourself that you're miserable. As I say, some people are cut out to play for the public or work for the public. Some aren't. There are people who can't do that. There are people, and I know many of them, and I can give you out of other businesses, Edgar Varese. He was a bitter man. He died bitter. Cézanne died bitter. Van Gogh died a lonely suicide. Why? They were skilled people, but they had to do what they had to do.
Is it tough to be Artie Shaw? I mean, your name
no more
signifies something.
No more. It's not tough to be who I am.
No,
it's tough to be Artie Shaw.
It's tough to be Artie Shaw.
Yeah, I don't like that.
And
I just came back about a month and a half ago. San Francisco Film Festival opened their film festival. It's the oldest in the country, so it's kind of an honor involved with my documentary that this woman, this Canadian filmmaker, did on me. It was an hour,
Was
hour
that
and
the one that
50.
was on TV? Wasn't? Oh, no, it was a feature.
No, it's a feature, an hour and 54
Yeah,
minutes.
yeah.
Played at Filmex
Played
here.
at Filmex,
A lot
that's
of tremendous
Yeah,
reviews.
I understand it was
All right.
terrific.
Well, it's a hell of a film. If you want to know about a person, it's a good
Did
film.
they use a lot of old footage in that?
Everything. She did a beautiful job. But she got 4 hours. She had to cut out 2 hours and something. Terrible job. She had a terrible problem. I want to see the outtakes. You know, but anyway,
Is that film
so the
gonna be
point is they opened the film,
Yeah.
they opened the film festival with that. They asked me to come up and talk to the audience after the film festival, which was at the Palace of Fine Arts, and I was introduced by Grover Sales and the people from the committee and then I answered questions, and then they flew the band out from Boston, and I did an hour and a half concert. So it cost them a small fortune for the evening. Anyway, it was such a head-turning experience that it took me 10 days when I came back here to get over it. And I thought, I don't want to do that anymore.
Was the
I am not the Pope. I don't want to be treated like the Pope. Just leave me alone. I'm a simple, pleasant, nice citizen. Don't push me into places I don't want to be. It's that simple. And I want to get back to my book. Now, you know, writing a book is tunnel vision.
Yes.
You're not doing that kind of book.
No.
Your book requires collaboration.
I need to.
But to write a book which you really care about is total tunnel vision. You lock yourself in a room so many hours every day, and out of it comes writing. Good or bad, you fix later. Writing is rewriting and overwriting, right? All right. That's what I want to do. Can't do that and live a public life where you're some kind of a notable figure.
But you can't do anything about it. I mean,
Yes, you can. I live in Newbury Park.
But you live in Newbury Park.
I live as a simple
but
citizen.
When you step out, you're Artie Shaw.
Not when nobody, people don't recognize me. It's very nice. That's the other thing that took very long time to be able to walk down the street and not be seen, not be picked out. People say to me in a meeting or at an evening in a party, "Oh, I didn't know you were Artie Shaw." I said, "That's great. Let's keep it like that." Then we're talking as person to person. The other way, you're talking to some kind of preconceived figure, and you cast me in some role I may not want to be in. You know, here's the guy that married all those broads. I get up at the Santa Barbara Writers Conference one time. I was invited to speak there as a guest speaker, and one guy asked questions. I spoke about 15 minutes telling him where I was, and now ask questions. I don't know what you want to know from me. One guy came up with the irrelevant question, "Why'd you marry all those beautiful girls?" I said, "What would you ask me if I'd married only ugly girls?" Dead silence and a lot of laughter. But it's a dumb question. If you're going to walk into a room of 50 or 3 girls and one's beautiful and the others are ugly, where are you going? Your eyes lead you to that. And invariably, that's the wrong one. There's an old Katanga proverb, which I've used in the introduction of my book, which may not be
Now
there.
you're really nailing me with Katanga proverbs.
Well, it's a marvelous one. I've read a lot of stuff by a guy named Bell of Africa. And the proverb is, "Fuck the pretty one, marry the ugly one." That's pretty good. I always fucked the pretty one and married her.
You did so many different things. You went to. What did you do in Spain during those years?
Breathed in and out a lot,
Yeah.
thought a lot,
Were you
did a
married
lot
then?
of thinking. I married Evelyn Keyes.
You were married Evelyn.
While we met in Paris. We'd met before when she was married to Johnny Houston.
Right.
And I'd met her then at the house of Joan Harrison, who later married Eric Ambler, who is sick as hell, by the way, she is now. She, I think, has some form of Alzheimer's or whatever it is. She's inherited millions, and she's just unable to live. Can't go out anymore. But anyway, I met Evelyn there, and we married there. But I didn't want to get married anymore, any more than I do now. But
And
the
you-
women insist on it, you know.
And you were in Spain and.
I met her in Paris.
Yeah.
I was living in Spain,
Yeah.
building a house in Spain, and I went to Spain because I could buy more time there than I could anywhere in the world.
Weren't Artie Shaw there?
No, nobody knew who the hell I was. Then they found out, Senor Don Arturo I was. And then somebody must have heard, because all of a sudden my bills and everything started coming in for Artie Shaw, Artixo with an accent on O.
Why did you come back?
Well, why did I go? Start with
Why
that.
did you go? Yeah.
Un-American activities.
Oh, were you politically involved?
I was involved in that. They called me up and finished me off. I could no longer work at all in showbiz.
What had been in your past that did you have time for?
I belonged to a lot of liberal organizations. I was a charter member of the World Peace Congress. One of the questions they asked me at the Velde Committee was, "Didn't you know there was a Communist Front peace organization?" I said, "Well, show me a Republican front one. I'll join that. Any peace organization. I'm for that. I was in a war. I don't want to be in another war." Well, that kind of thing. So I decided I was sick to death of this country, as it was then. If you were around during the McCarthy era, you know what I'm talking about. People were shameful. And so I decided to hell with it. I had to get a passport. That was hard. It cost me the equivalent of $15,000 to get a passport.
Because you were on this...
I was on that shit list. And I wanted to get out of here. It's like we're talking about the Russians weren't letting people out. We weren't letting people out. And the lawyer who got me my passport, when he went to Elizabeth Shipley's, who was then her office, and he went there with his wife, who had gone to school with Elizabeth Shipley. That's why he was able to do it for me. And he said, look, the guy didn't know what he was doing, da-da-da-da-da-da. And she relented. There were 2 applications on her desk at that time. He said one was mine, she signed it. The other was Oppenheimer, she didn't sign it. That was how bad it was. Oppenheimer, not allowed to have a passport. Ah, sickening.
And you came back and you got in the cow business, did you?
Well, no, I was in the cow business
Oh.
when that happened, when I was called before the committee. And I used to have to go into New York and do game shows now and then. I was very good at those, and good talk show host. All of a sudden, I was not kosher, so I couldn't be on television. So my farm went down the drain, everything went down the toilet. I had to sell the cattle and machinery. I had 240 acres of fallow land. You can't do anything with that.
What did you do when you came back from Spain?
Well, I went to Spain at that point. I didn't go to Spain, I went to Europe.
Yeah.
Found Spain. It was the cheapest, simplest, easiest way to live.
Did you have any money?
Enough to live on. I made a deal with RCA to give me X amount a year, rather. They would support me. In Spain, you could live on very little at that time. Then I met Evelyn, and my royalties picked up a little, and so forth and so on. I lived there about 5 years. By the end of the 5th year, I was beginning to think like a Spaniard, and that's no good. I didn't want to be a Spaniard. I'm still an American. Also, I was giving up a very big amount of weight in the battle with life. I mean, I couldn't speak Spanish, ever. As I spoke it fluently, but very ungrammatically. I sounded like a low Dutch comic, I guess. Weber and Fields or something. But anyway, I came back here because also people said it's getting better. It's okay now. You can do this and you can do that. I came back. Forget it. It never gets better. I said to a good friend of mine in New York recently, nothing gets better. Usually gets worse. The world we live in it seems to me, we're going down the tubes. We continue. Of course, we've been saying that since Sumeria. But this is a good one. It's the first time we've had the means to do it.
Did you do anything when you came back? Anything productive?
I got into what? I don't
Was
know.
that film just?
I finished a book.
You and any of the music in rock and roll in the last...
Any what?
Any value, do you think, musical significance in what we call rock and roll music, Beatles?
Oh, there are some people out there doing good things.
Do you listen to much of it at all?
Yeah, whenever it comes up, whenever the occasion arises, I listen. I can't stand things like the Carly Simons. That's all bullshit. But there are a few people doing some very good things out there. Joni Mitchell's got a hell of a set of ears. He does very interesting things. But don't tell me about Prince or about the Rolling Stones. What is that? I don't understand what the hell they're talking when they say rock and roll. As I say, I haven't caught up with the word jazz yet. All I know is it's music, and if it's good, it's good, and if it isn't, I don't know what it is.